everyone? Welcome back to another video. If you don't know who I am, that means you're new. I'm Mark. What's good with y'all? Go check out my other videos. Check them out. Check them out. But first, stay on this one. So look, I know it's been a few days. I know. But you know what I also know? I know something you don't. For like another 10 seconds, then I know something you also know, which is I'm doing at least 4 or 5 videos tonight. So I'm not trying to hear, oh, well, it's been a few days. No, it really isn't going to be. It's going to be all made up for. So let's get right into it. Pros and cons of red dot optics. Now, I'm going to be talking about a few pros and cons, and these pros and cons essentially will apply to all red dot optics, whether it's pistols or rifle optics, whatever. So let's get into it. Excuse me, no more beating around the bush. Now, some of y'all might be wondering, oh, well, what is your experience with red dots? I will say my experience is, with red dots is nowhere to some of the extent of some of these other YouTubers. However, I can give you a common sense insight, a common sense standpoint view from it. And, it's not that I have no experience with them. I just haven't shot thousands upon thousands of rounds through them, you know what I mean? Like that's, I'll be real with y'all. I have no reason to sit here and lie about it. But let's get right into it. For starters, we're going to start off with the pros. The pros, of course, one of the best pros is going to be that you can get your sight on target quicker. Now, some people might be thinking, oh, well, he's just saying that it's just easier to see it. Nope, I will get to that later. That is one of the pros. However, getting your sight on target or sight acquisition quicker is going to be something that most people, they take for granted. Because I'm sorry, but the truth of the matter here is that when you're working with iron sights is more so what I'm going to be comparing it to. When you're working with iron sights, or, you're going to generally be speaking having to sit here. You're going to have to line up front sight, rear sight, make sure it's sideways lined up, vertically lined up. You want to make sure that everything is all good there. Whereas with a red dot, you just make sure that your dot is on target and then you pull the trigger. Now, how important is this pro? Is it such a big pro that I would tell you, hey, stop what you're doing right now. You need to go put a red dot on every single one of your guns? No, not necessarily, because truth be told, that with enough training, yes, you can pick up, you can get a just as quick of a sight acquisition as you could with a red dot. Now, once again, that would require more training to do so than you would with just a red dot on its own. However, truth be told, whether people want to admit it or not, you can't buy skill. Jeez, I don't know why my nose is itching. But moving on from that pro, because that pro, it's a little, it's obvious, it's there, you know what I mean? But is it the biggest pro out of everything for, a red dot optic, whether it's on your handgun or whether it's on your rifle? No. The next pro, is it also the biggest? No. However, it is also a pretty damn important pro here, which is that it is going to be easier for people with stigmatism or with older eyes to pick up their sights. Now, some people might be arguing, oh, well, doesn't that fall under the same argument of sight acquisition, of, how quick it is to get your sight on target? Not necessarily, because truth be told, if you can't see your sights too well, regardless of whether your sight's on target or not, you're never really going to know. And whether, whether I want to, admit it or not and put my family's business out there is one thing. And you know what? I will, because there are no secrets in this. There's no secrets on this channel. Quit playing with me. I got nothing to hide from y'all. But back to what I was saying, there are some people in my family who own firearms who I flat out told them, hey, you're kind of getting up there in age. You either might want to sell this gun, whether it be to me or to someone else, and maybe you go buy a new gun that's MOS that you can put a red dot on, whether it's a handgun, rifle, whatever. You want to be able to see you want to be able to get your sight on target quicker. You want to be able to see your sights as a whole. If you can't see your sights, it doesn't matter if they're on target or not. You won't know. And some of them have taken my advice on it. They're like, hey, I'm going to look into that, whether that means they'll actually, go and get it. That's on them. Some of them are just like, I'm fine. I'm fine, buddy. But thank you though. And hey, that's on them. That's not my loss. You know what I mean? I have experience with both. So what does it matter to me? But overall though, being able to just get a much easier picture of your sights is going to be phenomenal. It is an absolutely huge pro. Nobody can deny that in any way, shape, or form, especially in a situation where we're talking a low light situation where, yeah, unless you have some night sights on your gun, you're probably going to see a red dot better than you would be able to see your sights. Now, moving on from number 2 of the pros, we're going on to number 3. And this one, in my opinion, is the biggest pro out of the 3. And I want you guys' opinions below whether or not you agree that this is the biggest pro. So, the biggest pro, in my opinion, is that you can zero your dot out to much further distances than most people can hit with iron sights. So, some people might be arguing, oh, well, if I really want to, shoot distances, I can just get a scope, I can do whatever. Yeah, sure. I'm not saying that's not the case. However, I'm saying compared to iron sights, a red dot optic, whether it be on your handgun, on your rifle, whatever, is going to allow you to shoot much further out, much more accurately than one would truly expect. And of course, there are, some firearm platforms. We'll take the AK platform, for example, where you can adjust the iron sights pretty quickly, to a far out distance. However, once again, that's you're running off the luck of iron sights, and it's going to be a little bit more difficult for you to do that, especially at a farther distance. But when it comes with a red dot, it's almost like a cheat code in a sense. Some people they're gonna disagree and be like, oh well, I can shoot much better with iron sights, and I'm willing to bet you money that those are the same people who grew up on nothing but iron sights. They've maybe have 1 or 2 dots, but in the end, you can shoot much further out with dots much easier than you can with your iron sights, for example. And that's something no one should take that for granted. I'll be honest here. Now, moving on from the pros, and I want to say this right now, of course, there are plenty of more pros and cons to red dot optics than what I'm listing here. I'm just listing you 3 that came off the top of my head for both. Now, moving on to cons. The cons, and this one, everybody's going to be like, oh, I should have known he was going to go for it. This is a tiny bit of Jewish in me that's coming out immediately. The price point. Some of these dots are incredibly expensive. Whether we're talking an aim point, you're looking at like $700, something like that. You're talking a Holosun, depending which one you're looking at $300, $400. The Holosun I was going to get for am going to get for my Glock 45 when I get that is like $350, almost $400. And yeah, some people might be arguing, wow, it really is that much money just, for some of the pros that I listed before. Yeah, I mean, it is an expensive product. We're talking about an accessory that's supposed to be just as reliable as a gun to defend your life. If you want to cheap out on something like that, you're going to lose zero. You're going to sit there and get a dot that breaks, whether the dot just doesn't turn on anymore or the glass cracks, whatever it could be. You don't want to cheap out on a dot, and that leaves a lot of room for failure, in my opinion, because what most people they do realize, but they tend to take for granted, is that you get iron sights for free with a majority of your firearms. There might be a couple of ARs that you might get that don't come with sights on them, that you just buy the sights and put them on. Not a big deal, really, though. You see what I mean? But overall, the price point is definitely something people want to take notice of, as it is, a good dot is going to be pretty expensive here. And once again, you don't want to cheap out. If you cheap out on something like a dot, there's no point in getting the dot, in my opinion. Now, moving on from number 1, I had to get number 1 out of the way. Is it the biggest con out of the list? No, not really. However, it is still a con. It is something that, you have to talk about. 2. Now, before I get into 2, I am aware that there are some exceptions to what I'm about to say. There are some dots, for example, the one I want to get for the Glock 45, that will allow you to, charge through the sun. It takes solar charging as well as replacing the battery. So yeah, I'm aware that there are some some dots that have an exception to this rule. However, the general rule doesn't change, which is that you probably are going to have to take off your dot just to change the battery on it, and then you're going to have to re-zero your dot. And while, of course, if you get a quality dot, That's not going to be something you have to do too often, perhaps once a year, once every other year. It is still something you're going to have to do. Now, is it the biggest deal in the world? No, not really. However, you want to make sure that when the time does come for you to change it, that you do change it, that you don't, for a lack of better words, that you're not dicking around. You know what I mean? So you definitely don't want your dot to fail on you just because you forgot to change battery. Now, that's number two. I knew number two wasn't going to be super, super long on there. Number three, and I think this is the one that I think is going to hit for people the most. What, in my opinion, is the biggest and most important con about red dot optics, truthfully, is just the fact, excuse me, that they can break. Now, some people might argue, oh, well, yeah, your sight, your iron sights can break. Yeah, sure. But do you know how much more effort it actually is to break off some iron sights off a gun than it is to break an optic on a gun? I mean, I'm sure some people are gonna, pull up the worst sights that they can even imagine, the cheapest sights that's on the market, and be like, oh yeah, well, you can break these so much easier than you can break this freaking aim point dot. Yeah, no duh, Sherlock. However, generally speaking, when it comes to a red dot optic, you are worrying much more about it breaking than you would with your traditional iron sights, for example. And this isn't a versus video. This isn't like, oh, iron sights versus red dots or nothing. It's just, you got to understand, when I'm going to compare red dots, I'm not going to compare red dots to like green dots, for example. That doesn't make sense to me. So I want to compare what are going to be the two most commonly used things, which, if I'm talking about red dots here and the pros and cons, I'm going to have to compare it to iron sights. So in the end, the biggest con for red dots is simply the fact that they are not as durable as some would argue iron sights are. And is that the end of the, that's okay, that's it, I'll never buy a red dot? No, of course not. Because in the end, while yes, dots generally speaking are not as durable as, say, something like iron sights, that doesn't mean you can't get a durable dot. That's not the case at all. You have to just spend money on it, which, once again, this all boils down to you not cheaping out on your red dot optics. Do not cheap out on any optics unless you plan on, okay, yeah, I plan on this breaking soon, or I plan on this not working the best, or I plan on not getting the best performance that I can out of this optic. That makes more sense. But if you're going to sit here and, talk about some real pros and cons here, if you're not spending good enough money, you're going to be worrying about your optic breaking like it's nothing almost. Compared to your iron sights that probably aren't going to break, you're definitely going to be much more worried about your optic breaking. Once again, though, I do want to point out, does that mean that I am telling people to not buy red dot optics? No, I'm not saying that at all. I think the pros, in my opinion, on red dot optics truthfully outweigh the cons. All you have to do is just get a good dot. Spend the money on it. Don't be cheap. Do not cheap out when it comes to a red dot. But I think that about wraps it up for this video. I don't want to keep going in circles here because I can feel my tisming, and I can feel that I'm about to go in circles, so I'm going to stop myself here. Y'all make sure to like, comment, subscribe, share, hit that bell. When you hit that bell, hit all, and whether or not you agree with me about these pros and cons of red dot optics, comment down below your opinions as to why or why not you agree with me. And then go ahead and make sure to check out all my other videos. Y'all make sure to stay legal, stay safe, stay dangerous. Have a good one, y'all. Peace.